Relationships are a part of who we are as humans. They're a part of how we've dominated the planet. They're a part of how we grow up as young ones. They're a part of how we find satisfaction in life. They're a huge part of what we find dissatisfying in life as well. Relationships with our family, with our lovers, with friends, with acquaintances, with colleagues, with community. Relationships are part of how we define ourselves. We reflect one another to each other, and that's in part how we know who we are. We're defined by our relationships in part. And so anything that helps us with relationships is of immeasurable value. Ketamine therapy has some really interesting ways of supporting and helping relationships. I'm excited to explore with you. I like to think of ketamine therapy as relationship modulating, similar to immunomodulating supplements and drugs. And what is immunomodulating? That's when, if the immune system is low, it supports it and strengthens it. If the immune system is overactive, it reduces it and supports it in coming back into balance. And so similarly, ketamine helps us if we need something more of something, if we need less of something. Ketamine is modulating and help us come into greater balance with our relationships. So I want to give you some examples of how it does that. And these are just a few of many examples. And in terms of relationships, and also each of these categories, entire lifetimes of study have been devoted to each one of these categories and more. And so these are just little simplifications, little examples to give you a sense of how ketamine therapy can help. The first example is something called enmeshment. What is enmeshment? It's when we've lost our sense of self and our sense of healthy boundaries in relationship to another person. And so ketamine can help us begin to restore our healthy boundaries and come back into right relationship. One of the causes of enmeshment is fear of abandonment or fear of the other leaving us. And so we begin compromising our boundaries more and more in order to keep them in our lives. And yet, this is based on a little misconception, which is that actually we are going to be okay. We are okay, and if the other person leaves, we will still be okay. Maybe it will be hard, maybe it will be better, but either way, we are okay. And so understanding that we are whole and able to be in this life with ourselves is a foundation for healthy relationship. And so when we restore our empowerment, then we have the freedom to risk being ourselves in a relationship, to risk being authentic on that enlivening edge of life, of not knowing what's going to happen. And so then true intimacy can arise out of that. We can truly be ourselves with the other. And from that place of speaking our authenticity, we then have the freedom to set healthy boundaries, to begin having the space we need in relationship to take care of ourselves and fully love ourselves. And from there, then the relationship might continue and grow more deeply together. That actually allows for deeper intimacy when we can fully be ourselves rather than maybe being in fear or projecting and not knowing who the other is. We actually get to know each other more deeply. So that is what increases intimacy. And so having healthy boundaries, being able to be empowered to be in our own truth in relationship is deeply beneficial for relationships. And if this does lead to a relationship ending or coming to a temporary, maybe bit of more space, then the relationship gets to end and move on, and there's room for new relationships to emerge in your life that are more in alignment with who you are. So it's actually a win-win situation, even if there might be painful periods of time that come. Another element of enmeshment is perhaps not voicing our own needs or feelings. And so we begin to hide or to not be taking in the things we need from life or from the relationship. And so we begin to be in touch with our own needs and be able to voice those. And that can actually be an incredible gift to a relationship, to someone who loves us and wants us to be in our fullest self. And so getting out of enmeshment actually empowers us and empowers the relationships that are in alignment with our healthy highest well-being. For others, they find that they more turn away from their relationships and avoid people, but also perhaps feel a sense of disconnection or loneliness or being distant from those they love. And ketamine can give us courage to turn toward our relationships, to take those steps to move inward and to help us be more connected to those we love. Another very important aspect of relationship is conflict and anger. And sometimes anger can be expressed destructively with blaming or violence or in other ways. And ketamine can begin to tune us into our anger and to the underlying needs there, the clarity there, so that we can actually express them in a healthy, constructive way in our relationships, and that benefits our relationships. The second half of conflict is learning to listen to the other and include the other's needs and the other's perspective on a situation, but without abandoning our own perspective. And so holding that tension between two opposing perspectives and working together to solve a problem and to come together is a profound resource that conflict allows us in relationship. And so ketamine therapy can increase our skills in this area. We are all human, and we can sometimes hurt others, intentionally or unintentionally. And ketamine gives us greater awareness of how we might be hurting others and greater thoughtfulness so that we can act in responsibility and integrity for our own actions and to be careful how we move in the world so that we're not unduly hurting others. Another common difficulty in relationships is learning to deal with situations where other people have hurt us. And it can give us a bigger perspective where we begin to see the context, the perspectives, the limited life that leads people to certain actions. And so it can give us sort of a broader picture of how people were led to have certain beliefs or actions that hurt us. And so that can lead to forgiveness and understanding where other people are coming from. Even as, and this is a crucial distinction with forgiveness, where that doesn't mean that we don't still have boundaries, that we don't still acknowledge that certain behaviors were not okay in the way that we were treated. But there can be an understanding of how that came about, and so a forgiveness while still having healthy boundaries and not putting ourselves in a situation where we might get hurt again with someone who maybe doesn't understand us. And if maybe they do understand us, and if they understand where we're coming from and how we were hurt, then reconciliation can happen as well. It's one of the gifts of being human that we can learn and grow and evolve over our lifetimes. And from these two understandings, we can begin to forgive ourselves as well, to understand our own limitations as human beings, and to see that we were doing the best we could. And if we've done something we regret in the past, which most, if not all of us, have done something like that many times, we begin to have forgiveness for ourselves and to both walk with greater awareness so that we're doing our best to not create regrets in the future, to not hurt others, to be in integrity with how we act in the world, but also to know that sometimes we mess up, that we're human, and that's okay too. And so that greater acceptance and forgiveness, there's a great freedom in it. And now, as a further consideration for all these processes we've just talked about, all of these apply to family, of course, and family relationships can be some of the most wounding and where the deepest pain happens. And ketamine can begin a process within us, beginning to look at our family relationships and see where we've been hurt, where maybe we've been out of integrity. And it starts a year-long, many years long, if not lifelong process of beginning to orient towards our own internal wounding, our own actions, and towards our family members, and beginning to see how and where we can have greater harmony with our family or begin to reconnect, or where maybe it's not possible, but to have some sort of resolution. So many people come to the end of their lives and have great regret about not being able to have been closer with their family, with their parents, with their children. And ketamine therapy can greatly help, and it's not necessarily a quick fix, but can help us begin to reconnect with some of the most important people in our lives. And overall, what ketamine is doing is it's putting us in a more observer perspective so we can have more objectivity and compassion for ourselves, how we act in relationship, our others, how they act in relationship to us and other people in their lives. And overall, that just gives us a greater picture to have more knowledge in navigating relationships. And as a final example, but certainly not the least example, so often we have people in our lives that we see daily or often who we take for granted, that we forget that how precious it is to have them in our lives. And ketamine reminds us of the incredible jewel that relationship is. And so we have greater gratitude and appreciation for those who are in our lives. And we act out of that, and there's greater connection and love available from that. As we can see, ketamine has a wide range of effects on relationships that allow them to be modulated in ways that benefit us and those who we know. I've been loving exploring these applications of ketamine therapy with you, and we will continue the journey in the weeks to come. Together, we have so much more knowledge. Share your wisdom with the community and comment. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you want more psychedelic therapy content. And may your journey be blessed with guidance, protection, and strength.